CyberHub bunker and studio. You're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another awesome episode of the CyberHub Podcast Cyber News. I hope you guys are having a great Monday morning. I hope you had a magnificent weekend. It is a very special day here today. The show is going to be a little bit shorter. It is Martin Luther King Day, and I will be playing the I Have a Dream speech by Dr. King here after we wrap up some of the show. I urge you to stick around. It's 6 minutes and 47 seconds, but it's probably one of the most important speeches in American history. And the show's not just about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is about people, and we want to keep it that way as well, folks. So please make sure to tune in to that as well. So we'll get that. Can everyone see the CyberHub Podcast website on the screen? Just a curiosity, because from my feed, for whatever reason, I'm not seeing it. Can everyone see it? Comment below if you can. If not, then let me just refresh this and we'll see. I'm still not seeing it there. So let me do this real quick. You guys can see me. Let's just get it back up here, folks. All right. Busy show. A lot of stuff to talk about, especially in cyber warfare. Something I talked about last week is actually taking place. Not sure what that's going to mean, but we'll figure it out here in just a minute. So we'll get to that there in just a few moments, folks. Before we do that, though, shout outs to Anthony. Good morning to John Dela Cruz. Good morning to Eddie. Good morning to Steve Findley. I got to see who this is right here. All right. Now it should be up for everyone. Now everyone should be able to see it. Magnificent. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for your patience. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, John. You see it through LinkedIn. Now it's there. All right. Here we go. Technical issues on a Monday morning. Would not be surprised any other way. We've got a packed show. Thank you all for being here. Let's get right into it. Before we do that, though, my double espresso, which I absolutely need. I've had a shot right before we actually, I had this one poured out. So 3 shots for me this morning. Coffee cup, cheers. All right, let's get into today's story. And we are focusing on Eastern Europe today. Microsoft is warning of a data wiping malware that's disguised as ransomware that's targeting Ukrainian targets all over again. At present, based on the Microsoft visibility, the investigation teams have identified a malware in dozens of impacted systems, and that number could grow as the investigation continues. The OS maker said that the affected systems belong to multiple government agencies, nonprofit, IT orgs, all based in the Ukraine. Now, if some of you avoid mainstream or any type of news and you go, listen, I've got enough problems in my life. I don't need to hear about anyone else's. Russia has built up a force on the border of the Ukraine. Going back to about 2013-14, Russia took over Crimea. Crimea was part of the Ukraine. The Ukraine had leased a naval base to Russia there. That lease was coming up, meaning that Ukraine was going to ask Russia to leave because they wanted to be part of NATO, and they were going to open that base to NATO. That Crimea naval base was the only base that Russia had that was in the Mediterranean and would allow it to have direct access to that area. So Russia then started the whole shut down the Malaysian airliner out of the sky. There was a civil war that broke out there. Russia and still controls part of the eastern of the Ukraine from Donetsk to the Russian border. That's all still Russian controlled. And now Russia has built up the forces threatening to invade the Ukraine and reaching as far as Kiev, which is the capital of the Ukraine. In that, I've said on Clubhouse, and if you haven't seen it, go check it out. The replay is available on my LinkedIn page. I posted it yesterday, I believe yesterday. I talked about how the first shot in this battle between Russia and Ukraine is going to be from a cyber perspective. This was before these stories broke. not saying I predict the future, but I know the Russian playbook fairly well. And here's what's going on with this. This malware is targeting Ukrainian government agencies, nonprofits that support people, and specific IT firms that support the Ukrainian government. I've spoken to several people that I know within the Ukrainian administration and across the Ukraine. I did live in Kiev for nearly a year, over a decade ago, just under a decade ago. I'm sorry. 10 years ago, a decade ago, I lived in the Ukraine. And so I will say that I've spoken to several people in that neck of the woods, and they've all said that tensions are extremely high at the moment. A lot of different cyber attacks are taking place, including attacks on critical infrastructure and the threatening of that as well, which goes on post this story. The government of the Ukraine Sunday formally announces that Russia is behind the mastermind behind the attacks that targeted websites of public institutions and government agencies this past week. All the evidence points to the fact that Russia is behind the cyber attack, according to the Ministry of Digital Transformation. Moscow continues to wage a hybrid war against the Ukraine. The idea is beat them into submission. It's a very classic KGB, now FSB kind of tool, psychological warfare. Take away the things, let them know you can reach every single part of their life, and hopefully they would submit to your will. Russia is very uncomfortable with the Ukraine joining NATO. That would open up the door to other former USSR countries joining NATO. This is significant for Russia, folks, and Putin sees this as top of mind, which is why he's using cyber warfare before anything else. But we stay with Russia because Russia over the weekend happened to also do something else. They raided and arrested 8 suspected REvil ransomware gang members. The attack and the video, which I've shared, shows the FSB breaking into these threat actors' homes and arresting them, finding millions of dollars worth of cash and cryptocurrency, as well as a bunch of laptops and computers, all of which shows that they found $6.6 million in traditional currency and crypto as well. And you can see the whole video. I've also shared that on my LinkedIn page. You can go and check it out as well. It is absolutely worthwhile to watch the video of how the FSB goes in and arrests these guys. Now, they've taken down these 8 guys. Someone else will pop up, and there'll be someone else. So we can celebrate this a little bit, but don't let your guards down. Don't think they're gone. Someone else will take their place. Always does. It's the way it always works. And finally, details have been published on the AWS flaw that's leading to a bunch of data leaks. The first of the security flaw is actually described as an XML entity error that could have been exploited to leak sensitive files stored in the CloudFormation service, as well as disclose credentials for internal AWS infrastructure services. CloudFormation itself, if you don't know, is a service that helps users provision AWS resources using templates to create and configure resource dynamically using API calls. The XXC vulnerability could have allowed attackers to read files, perform HTTP requests on behalf of compromised CloudFormation servers, according to the advisory. The host contained multiple AWS service binaries and various config files, and an attacker could have leveraged the data to bypass tenant boundaries and gain privileged access to any resource within AWS. The vulnerability was addressed on September 15th, 1 week after it was reported to the AWS team, impacting the AWS Glue service. The second vulnerability could have been used to create resource and access the data belonging to other AWS Glue customers. The exploitation process, however, was complex, required a bunch of steps less likely to take place. AWS issued a statement saying we're aware of an issue related to AWS Glue ETL in AWS CloudFormation and can confirm that no AWS customers' accounts or data were affected. Upon learning of this matter from the company, we took immediate actions to mitigate it within hours and have added additional controls to the services to prevent reoccurrence. This, according to the folks over at AWS. Now, today is a very, very special day in the U.S. Today is the day we honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. And this show's about a lot more than just than just that. This show is about Dr. King and his legacy. I happen to reside in Atlanta, and I've been to Dr. King's church home and his memorial sites where he and his wife are buried. And I got to tell you, folks, his legacy lives on. 59 years ago, he gave this speech, and I think in a day like today, we go beyond cyber. We see brink of war everywhere we go. We see a lot of division within our nation and within specific communities today. And what better way to end today's show than to listen to these awesome words? So I will leave at this. Once this is over, the show will be over. So please make sure to check it out and subscribe. And thank you all so much for being part of today's show and tuning in. Sorry for the technical issues. And here we go. Dr. King in one of the greatest speeches in American history.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when they capital, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.